No one can ever truly know what happens behind another family's closed doors. However, one story unfolded so unexpectedly and intensely that it shocked even seasoned detectives. In the early hours of September 22nd, 2020, a frantic call was made to emergency services. A man, breathless with fear, reported finding his wife, Maria Muñoz, unconscious and unresponsive. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but there was nothing they could do. Maria had already passed away. What seemed like a sudden tragedy was, in reality, a dark and complicated story far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Maria's life began like a fairy tale, with every sign of a happy ending. She was successful in her career, a devoted wife, and a loving mother. But something went terribly wrong. At some point, her husband began an affair and refused to let go of either woman. Maria endured this heartbreak for years, trying to save her marriage for the sake of their children. Tragically, it all ended in heartbreak. Maria Abel Munoz was born on August 18, 1989, in Peñuelas, a small town in southern Puerto Rico. She was the youngest child in a humble family. Maria excelled in school and dreamed of a career in medicine, driven by a desire to save lives and help others. After graduating, she enrolled in a prestigious medical university. During her studies, Maria met Joel P., a young doctor completing his residency. Despite being nearly 11 years older, the two quickly developed a deep connection, and their romance blossomed. They moved in together, and Joel proposed to Maria, who happily said yes. In 2011, the couple relocated to Laredo, Texas, near the Mexican border. Both found work at the same hospital, Maria as a nurse anesthetist and Joel as a surgical assistant. They continued their studies to advance their careers, earning a comfortable income that allowed them to buy a spacious home in a good neighborhood and 2 cars. By 2015, their life seemed picture perfect, but appearances can be deceiving. The couple had their first child, a boy named Alejandro, and in 2018, Maria gave birth to a daughter, Valentina. After their children were born, Maria decided to take a break from work to focus on raising them and managing the household. She planned to return to her career and renew her medical license once the kids were older. To everyone around them, Maria and Joel seemed like a perfect, happy family. They loved each other, raised their children together, and enjoyed financial stability, living a comfortable life without any apparent struggles. But beneath this facade of an ideal life, a hidden drama was unfolding, one that no one suspected. On the early morning of September 22nd, 2020, an anxious man called emergency services, reporting that he had found his wife unconscious. He said he had tried to revive her, but she wasn't responding. The caller was Joel, and he pleaded for a medical team to arrive as quickly as possible to save her. Within 10 minutes, a patrol car and ambulance reached their home. Joel, dressed in blue surgical scrubs, opened the door and urgently led responders upstairs to the bedroom. There, 31-year-old Maria lay on the floor, unconscious, not breathing, and without a pulse. Her body was still warm, and Joel claimed he had performed CPR and chest compressions for 20 minutes, but nothing had worked. Paramedics also tried to resuscitate her, but were unsuccessful. Maria was pronounced dead at the scene. When authorities asked Joel what might have happened, he suggested that Maria could have taken a large dose of medication, which might have been fatal. The paramedics questioned if she had a history of substance dependency, but Joel denied this, insisting she had never used any such substances. However, he admitted that Maria had recently been struggling with severe depression and anxiety. A doctor had prescribed medication for her, and Joel speculated she might have accidentally taken too much, or perhaps deliberately overdosed. Joel added that Maria had mentioned feeling overwhelmed and had even brought up thoughts of self-harm in a conversation just the day before. However, he confessed that he hadn't taken her words seriously at the time. When the police asked to see the medication Maria had been prescribed, Joel complied, handing it over for investigation. Joel walked into the bathroom and returned with a nearly full bottle of pills. This immediately raised suspicions. In cases of overdose, it's unusual for the pills to be neatly put away afterward. There were no empty bottles, blister packs, or containers near Maria's body or anywhere else in the room. The nearly full bottle suggested that if she had taken any pills, it was a very small amount, unlikely to be fatal. However, nothing could be confirmed without an autopsy and toxicology report to identify what was in her system. While paramedics worked to revive Maria and police examined the scene, 5-year-old Alejandro and 2-year-old Valentina remained peacefully asleep in a nearby room, unaware of the tragedy unfolding. Joel explained that he had already contacted relatives who were prepared to temporarily care for the children until the situation was resolved. Despite their efforts, the medical team couldn't save Maria. The true cause of her death remained unclear, but Joel, as the only person present at the time, became the prime suspect. Grieving or not, the police needed to question him thoroughly. Joel was taken to the station, and everyone who saw him that day noticed his odd and erratic behavior. At first glance, it could have been attributed to shock or grief, but almost everything about him seemed off. He was sweating profusely, so much so that his clothes were soaked and clung to him. He was wearing surgical scrubs, an unusual choice for the middle of the night, especially since he wasn't scheduled to work. His movements were frantic and exaggerated. He repeatedly jumped up from his seat like a puppet on strings. His statements were scattered and inconsistent, adding to the growing suspicion. Joel's behavior also suggested he might have been under the influence of something. Excessive sweating, agitation, and nervous energy are often signs of substance use. What made things even stranger was the small crinkly object Joel was unconsciously fidgeting with in his hand. When officers asked him what it was, they discovered it was packaging from a catheter needle, the type used for injecting substances into veins. The discovery only deepened the mystery, leaving investigators to wonder what role, if any, Joel had played in Maria's untimely death. Joel casually brushed off the crinkly packaging as just trash, but his behavior only grew more suspicious. At one point, he discreetly pocketed the pill bottle he had earlier shown the police, the same one prescribed to Maria. When officers noticed it was missing and asked where it had gone, Joel feigned surprise, claiming he had no idea. However, the officers' body cameras had recorded the moment he quietly took the bottle and slipped it into his pocket. Confronted with the footage, Joel looked embarrassed and reluctantly handed it over, explaining that he might have taken it unconsciously due to the shock. Joel then began revealing details about their marriage, admitting that he and Maria had been struggling for months and were on the verge of divorce. According to him, they had been living apart, but few people in their circle knew about it. Joel claimed this was due to Maria's mental health struggles, which had strained their relationship. He said he visited the house often to see the children and had been trying to reconcile with Maria. On the night before Maria's death, Joel said he had come to spend time with the kids and stayed after they went to bed. He claimed that he and Maria had a deep conversation, clearing the air and reconciling. He also mentioned that they were intimate later that evening. Joel stated that after taking a shower, he returned to the bedroom and found Maria unresponsive. At first, he thought she had fallen asleep, but when he realized she wasn't breathing, he called emergency services and tried to revive her. When asked why he had been wearing surgical scrubs at home that night, Joel had no reasonable explanation. The autopsy report, meanwhile, revealed no immediate cause of death. There were no visible injuries, no signs of a struggle, and no indications of trauma on Maria's body. She had died shortly before the paramedics arrived, as her body was still warm. The lack of clear answers left investigators with three possibilities: Maria's death was either a voluntary act, a tragic accident, or a deliberate crime. At this stage, none could be ruled out. Joel's story about being intimate with Maria shortly before her death was also called into question. Forensic experts found no evidence on Maria's body to support his claim, raising further doubts. Why had Joel lied about such a detail? Was he trying to portray their relationship in a certain way? Or was there a deeper, more sinister motive behind his actions? The truth remained shrouded in mystery. Joel's claim about reconciling with Maria seemed aimed at portraying their relationship in a positive light, but it may not have reflected reality. The autopsy revealed that Maria's stomach was empty, which didn't align with Joel's account that she had taken medication while he was in the shower, a shower that, by his own estimation, lasted no more than 10 minutes. Even if Maria had consumed pills during that time, no medication could dissolve and act so rapidly to cause her death. Despite this inconsistency, experts determined that Maria's death resulted from poisoning by an unknown substance. The poisoning led to severe intoxication, respiratory failure, and paralysis of the heart muscle. During the autopsy, The medical examiner found a small puncture mark on the inside of Maria's right arm, near the elbow. The mark appeared to be from a precise injection with a very fine needle, but the location was one that Maria would have struggled to reach herself, raising suspicions. A detailed toxicology analysis was ordered to identify the substance that caused Maria's death, but this process would take time. Meanwhile, investigators searched for clues at the scene. When the police informed Joel they needed to search the house and asked for his consent, he became visibly uneasy. He claimed that Maria was a private person and would not have wanted strangers going through her belongings. He also argued that a search was unnecessary, insisting that she had simply taken her own life. The authorities disagreed, pointing out that the cause of death remained undetermined and foul play could not be ruled out. They added that they would obtain a search warrant if needed, urging Joel to make the process smoother by giving his consent. Realizing he had no other choice, Joel reluctantly agreed, though his anxiety was evident. His behavior suggested he might have intended to return home after questioning to clean up or hide evidence, as he had already tried to conceal the pill bottle earlier. When investigators began their search, inconsistencies in Joel's account quickly emerged. He had claimed everything happened while he was in the shower, but the shower stall was completely dry, as if it hadn't been used recently. This discovery raised further doubts about his story and left investigators wondering what else might not add up. The inconsistencies in Joel's story continued to pile up. The bathroom showed no signs of recent use, no puddles, no steam, and no droplets on the walls. There wasn't even a damp towel in sight that Joel might have used to dry himself. Adding to the implausibility, the medicine cabinet where Maria's pills were kept was in the same bathroom where Joel claimed to have been showering. For Maria to have taken a fatal dose of medication, returned the bottle to the cabinet, and collapsed in the bedroom all without Joel noticing seemed highly improbable. As the search progressed, investigators made a startling discovery: a small intravenous butterfly catheter tucked behind the leg of the bed. This type of catheter is typically used for administering medication into peripheral veins. It looked as though someone had hastily discarded it in an attempt to hide it. The officers immediately connected this to the crinkly packaging Joel had been nervously fidgeting with earlier at the station. It appeared likely he had pocketed the catheter's packaging at the scene, and under stress, unconsciously played with it later. However, the most significant find was Maria's personal diary. She had been keeping it for years, recording her private thoughts, emotions, and struggles. This diary became a critical piece of evidence in unraveling the complex case. The diary of a betrayed wife. The pages of Maria's diary painted a heartbreaking picture of a woman deeply afraid of losing her husband. She wrote about her desperate attempts to keep the family intact and her concerns over the harmful environment their strained relationship might create for Alejandro and Valentina. Maria adored her children. They were the center of her world. But she also expressed profound doubts about whether she could ever forgive Joel for his betrayal and the way he had treated her. As investigators read further, they uncovered a shocking revelation: Joel had been seeing another woman for years. It wasn't just a casual affair. Joel was effectively living a double life. He was unwilling to choose between his wife and his lover, leaving Maria trapped in a painful and emotionally exhausting situation. Maria's entries revealed the toll Joel's actions had taken on her mental health. She struggled with the unbearable emotional pain of trying to hold her family together while enduring his infidelity. The diary shed light on Maria's inner world, making it clear that her anxiety and depression were closely tied to Joel's actions. Maria chose not to push Joel away, hoping he would eventually come to his senses and return to her and the children. However, the strain became too much for her to handle alone, so she sought professional help. A specialist prescribed her antidepressants, but Maria rarely took them, worried about side effects and the potential for dependency. Despite her struggles, Maria was determined to rebuild her life. She was preparing for exams to renew her medical license and planned to return to work as a nurse anesthetist after her maternity leave. Her diary showed that she was focused on the future, making it hard to believe she would suddenly choose to end her own life. In the last month of her writings, Maria's tone shifted. She no longer dwelled on her pain or her hopes of fixing her marriage. Instead, she wrote about letting go of the past and moving forward for herself and her children. She seemed ready to give Joel a divorce and let him go but wanted to maintain a positive relationship for the sake of their kids. A friend's account. In the neighborhood where Maria and Joel lived, a woman named Adriana, who was close friends with Maria, noticed the sound of sirens late that night. Feeling uneasy, she approached the house the next morning when she saw police cars parked outside. When she learned about Maria's sudden passing, Adriana was in shock. She immediately asked to speak with investigators, saying she had information to share. Adriana confirmed that Maria and Joel had been living apart for about 5 months, although Joel often visited to see the children. She said that the family had once seemed happy, but about 2 years ago, things took a dramatic turn. Joel, now 40 years old, began to change noticeably. He lost a lot of weight and started working out obsessively. Soon, he bulked up significantly, and Adriana suspected he might be using performance-enhancing substances. As Joel transformed physically, his personality also changed, but not for the better. Adriana described him as becoming arrogant, self-centered, and aggressive. She even suspected he might be using banned substances, though Maria avoided talking about this whenever Adriana brought it up. Joel's changes were also reflected on his social media. Once a humble, family-oriented man who posted pictures of his wife and children, his account gradually shifted to feature images of his new physique, luxury items, and activities that painted a very different picture of his life. Joel seemed increasingly obsessed with himself, frequently posting photos on social media that flaunted his muscular body, often with captions implying he was open to new relationships. According to Adriana, their family troubles began when Maria was pregnant with their second child. Joel was often absent, irritable, and vocal about feeling trapped in family life. Maria, trying to remain hopeful, thought he might change after their baby was born. However, her hopes were shattered when she discovered that Joel was seeing someone else. The other woman. Joel's new romantic interest turned out to be Janet Aranda, a young surgical nurse who worked at the same hospital and was familiar with Maria. While Maria was at home caring for their newborn daughter in 2018, Joel had taken a vacation to spend time with Janet. Eventually, Maria discovered the affair but chose not to give up on her marriage, leading to a tense love triangle that lasted 2 years. Janet's statement. Janet willingly came to the police station when asked to give her statement, appearing calm and cooperative. She admitted to being in a relationship with Joel for 2 years and confirmed that he had been living with her for the past few months. She acknowledged knowing about Joel's marriage and his 2 children, as well as being personally acquainted with Maria. Janet claimed to have been confident from the start that Joel would ultimately choose her over his wife. She stated that Joel had never spoken ill of Maria, nor had he expressed any intent to harm her. Janet's composed demeanor and willingness to cooperate contrasted sharply with Joel's increasingly suspicious behavior. This testimony added another layer of complexity to the case, as investigators now had to consider how the affair and love triangle might have contributed to Maria's tragic death. Janet's testimony. Faced with the deal for immunity, Janet disclosed shocking details about Joel's behavior and actions leading up to Maria's death. She revealed that Joel had a habit of stealing potent substances from the hospital, including those used for surgical anesthesia. He would bring these drugs to her apartment, injecting himself to achieve a euphoric state. Janet admitted that she had repeatedly urged him to stop, fearing both for his safety and the potential legal consequences if he were caught. However, Joel assured her that his knowledge of the drugs made his use safe, and that he was confident he would never be discovered. Janet described how Joel's drug use often caused dramatic mood swings, making him unpredictable and increasingly paranoid. When asked about the night of Maria's death, Janet stated she knew Joel had visited Maria's home earlier in the evening, but claimed she had no idea of his intentions. However, she did admit that in the weeks leading up to the incident, Joel had spoken about Maria as an obstacle to his happiness and their future together. He expressed frustration that Maria wouldn't agree to a divorce and confided in Janet that he felt the only way to resolve his situation was if Maria were out of the picture. A calculated plan. Janet's testimony further revealed that Joel had allegedly experimented with mixing the drugs he used, learning their effects and dosages meticulously. Investigators believed that this experimentation indicated Joel's premeditated intent to use these substances against Maria. Moreover, Janet stated that Joel had mentioned Maria's fear of medication and her reluctance to take even prescribed antidepressants. This knowledge, she suggested, might have led him to opt for intravenous administration, ensuring Maria would not suspect anything. Final charges. With Janet's testimony, the toxicology report, and evidence from the scene including the butterfly catheter found in the bedroom and the substances Joel had access to at the hospital, authorities felt they had a compelling case. Joel was formally charged with premeditated murder, as the evidence strongly suggested he had intentionally poisoned Maria with a lethal cocktail of drugs. Janet's cooperation and immunity meant she was not implicated as an accomplice, but her revelations painted a picture of Joel as a manipulative and dangerous individual willing to go to extreme lengths to escape his marriage. The trial would later become a focal point of public attention, as it involved betrayal, calculated actions, and the tragic loss of a young mother who had been trying to rebuild her life. The trial and verdict. The trial against Joel began in March 2023, drawing significant public interest due to its dramatic twists, intricate evidence, and the tragic circumstances surrounding Maria's death. The prosecution relied heavily on a combination of toxicology reports, Janet's testimony, and the diary entries that painted a vivid picture of Maria's emotional struggles and Joel's questionable character. The prosecution's case. Prosecutors argued that Joel had methodically planned Maria's death to escape the financial and emotional consequences of divorce. They presented 1. Toxicology evidence: the deadly cocktail of 7 substances found in Maria's system, all of which Joel had access to and expertise in administering. 2. The injection site: the puncture mark on Maria's right arm, in a position almost impossible for her to have done herself, indicated foul play. 3. Janet's testimony: Janet's detailed account of Joel's drug use, his manipulative tendencies, and his dissatisfaction with Maria's refusal to divorce. 4. Behavior and evidence at the scene: Joel's inconsistent statements, the dry shower stall despite his claims, and his attempts to hide the pill bottle and butterfly catheter. The prosecution reconstructed the timeline, suggesting Joel poisoned Maria during their conversation, then administered a lethal injection when she began to feel unwell. The defense's argument. Joel's defense team tried to discredit Janet's testimony, painting her as a spurned lover seeking revenge. They argued that Maria's death could have been a tragic suicide, citing her struggles with depression and Joel's claims that she had taken pills that night. However, the lack of any residue or evidence of pills in Maria's stomach and the overwhelming presence of injected substances undermined this theory. The verdict. After weeks of deliberation and testimony from medical experts, investigators, and character witnesses, the jury found Joel guilty of first-degree murder. The court emphasized Joel's access to the substances, his expertise, and the overwhelming evidence of intent and premeditation. The sentence. Joel was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, with the judge describing his actions as calculated, cold, and motivated by greed and selfishness. The ruling brought some closure to Maria's family, who expressed relief that justice had been served. Aftermath. Janet faced significant public scrutiny despite her immunity, with many questioning her role in enabling Joel's behavior. She later relocated to a different city to escape the media spotlight. Maria's children were placed under the care of her parents, who vowed to keep her memory alive and ensure the children grew up in a loving environment. The case highlighted issues around domestic abuse, manipulation, and the potential misuse of medical knowledge, sparking broader discussions about safeguards in the healthcare system to prevent similar tragedies.